We are exploring the book by Susan Jeffers, Embracing Uncertainty, and you are fine if you don't have this book. You can still follow along easily. So don't worry about that. But if you appreciate the book, if you're in the Zoom room, give a little wave. If you're on Facebook Live, post about what you're enjoying about it. If you don't have this book, it might be something you want to get. I have gotten comments from people, texts, saying that this has been the most powerful Adventures in Spirituality series for them yet. So there's definitely a lot to explore here. There's a lot to experience. So again, if you are someone who is missing some physical contact or just likes people, come on into the Zoom room. You can find the link to that and get in there. If you can't get in this Sunday, we can help you. If you just email Unity Village Chapel, we'll make sure you get in next Sunday. But you get to see the friendly faces of everyone who you usually sit near if you are someone that comes to services on grounds at Unity headquarters at Unity Village Chapel. And if you are someone that live streams normally, you have the unique opportunity to get to know the other people that you can only see the backs of their heads normally on a Sunday morning. You get to chat with them, and we have incredible discussions and incredible connections that happen right here in the Zoom room right after the service. So my little one comes out, we grab our tea or coffee, and we just sit here and we chat about whatever is up. We share prayer requests and we connect. So if that's something that speaks to your heart, I invite you to just hop on in. Make sure to mute yourself when you hop on in, because we have chosen this format so that we can actually see each other. So we count on you muting yourself when you get here. Are you ready? Is your heart open? Is your mind open? One of my favorite books from Wendy Craig Purcell is Ask Yourself This. In the book, Ask Yourself This, Wendy Craig Purcell talks about a discussion she has with someone, and they find out what she does. And the person responds and says, "Oh, I don't believe in God." And she responds with this question: "Tell me about the God you don't believe in. Tell me about the God you don't believe in." Which leads to an amazing, fascinating conversation. And if you try it with someone, you'll find this out. It leads to an amazing conversation. And her response then after that conversation was, "I don't believe in that God either." So let's talk today about the God you believe in. Let's talk today about the idea of spirituality and the idea of religion and what we believe in. I saw this image recently on a minister's discussion group post. The discussion group was asking us, what's the difference between spirituality and religion? And all of the ministers in this discussion group weighed in with their answers. If you take a look at this image, it makes it clear. Religion is a fish swimming in the sea of life, contained by a bowl, contained by a casing or a limitation, a boundary, a border. And spirituality is that fish swimming freely in the spiritual sea. Rumi said this: "When we talk about God, we're like a school of fish discussing the possible existence of the sea." That image reminds us of this truth. So my response in the post about what's the distinction between religion and spirituality, and I would love to hear your ideas on this. My responses were this: religion is about the collective, a group, and spirituality is about an individual. Religion is about the instructional, the how-to, pointing to something, helping people get there. Spirituality is about the experiential. Religion is organized. It models people. Spirituality is wild and free. It models nature. It models authenticity. It models the wild. In Unity and in New Thought, we strive to be the space that inspires individual experience, modeling the nature of God, with instruction and organization set up for the point and purpose of only that, bringing people to an experience, both individually and collectively, of God consciousness, helping people inquire and helping people awaken to their pure potential and to their divine birthright, which is to know themselves as an emanation and expression of Source. Spiritual growth and abundant living is part of our mission, part of our vision, what we're here for, and creating a world that works for all is what we stand for. We are here to move from the idea of what God is to what you are. Listen to that. That could be thought of as sacrilegious in some circles. It's not so much about discussing what God is, as it is discussing and uncovering and discovering what you are, and knowing that the rest will take care of itself when you understand your true nature, when you understand your divine nature. And I do believe that this is what the master teacher taught. I do believe that the master teacher came trying to awaken people to how they can be more, act more, think more, love more, align more with their divine potential, so that they can experience and bring more God onto the planet and into experience. In New Thought, we're not attached to your idea of God. There are people in New Thought that have ideas of God that could be considered very conventional and traditional. There are people in New Thought that say, when someone asks, do you believe in God? They might answer no. Do you have a religion? They might answer no. That's not a concern at all. It's more about practical tools to ignite the experience and the intellect. The experience of God and the intellect to understand, intuit, and recognize that we are all one and that we are swimming in this sea of God, that there is no way to be separate from it. It doesn't even matter if the name God isn't introduced. I've done many a wedding without the name God. Isn't that interesting? And you know what I ask them? I say, what do you believe in? And most often, you know what the answer is? Love. And I say, so is it comfortable for you if every place that I would have said God or spirit or source, if I say love? Absolutely. That feels good. And you know what we define God as in New Thought? Love. Love. It's hard to argue with love, because love is an experience. It's an experience that you can't put in a fishbowl because it doesn't have boundaries. You can't always define it because it's undefinable. But what you know, what I know, is that when I experience it, I feel fully alive. When I experience it, I have a full-bodied experience of what seems like something of biblical proportions. It seems like something that is beyond human. It seems like I am home. Susan Jeffers says this in her book, Embracing Uncertainty. She says, if you derive joy and love and meaning and solace, and most importantly, a sense of trust from it all, from your spirituality, from your ideas of God, your God ideas, your religion, if you derive those things, that's wonderful. If your religion gives you those things, that is wonderful. Ask yourself this. Does your God concept, does your idea of scripture or the Bible, does your idea of God serve? Does your God concept serve? Does it serve you as an individual? Does it serve others? And does it serve the collective? And you may, on a side note, ask yourself, what does it serve them? Does it serve them a good dose of judgment and hell and damnation of live my way or hit the highway? Or does it serve them love? Does it serve them love? Love on a scale that you can feel, love on a scale that is tangible, love on a scale that no one can argue with because they know it, they recognize it, and it brings them home. Home to peace. home to wisdom, home to life. One of my favorite quotes, I think, of the whole book, and this is a little weird, but of the whole book, Embracing Uncertainty, by Susan Jeffers, was this. She quoted Blaise Pascal, the mathematician and philosopher, when she said, when she said this, she said, men never do evil so completely and cheerfully as when they do it from religious conviction. Men never do evil so completely and cheerfully as when they do it from religious conviction. So let's look at this idea of religion. Let's look at this idea of God, because a lot of people have thrown out both spirituality and religion, right? And rightfully so, because there is so much that does not look like God. There is so much that does not look like love. There is so much that does not look like harmony. There's so much that does not look like kindness. So on an individual level, what does our practice give us? What does our religion or our spirituality or our God concept or our scripture give us? On an individual level, does it help us trust? Does it bring you less fear and more peace? Does it highlight differences and make differences a problem? Does it bring comfort to the idea of death or disease? Does it inspire us as individuals to be instruments of peace, to honor and awaken our gifts? Or does it breed entitlement? Does it breed contentment? Does it breed entitlement? That's sometimes a question that we have to feel. We have to get into the feeling nature of that question. Does my God's concept breed contentment or entitlement? Does it elevate you above others, or does it keep you humble, sober, growing? Does it make you self-assured or arrogantly self-righteous? Does it help you develop your intelligence and your independent thinking? Or does it create loyalty, dependence on an outer authority or an intermediary, whether it's someone else's writings, interpretation, or understanding? Does it shun questions or invite in inquiry? On an individual level, those are important questions for us to ask. And it is scary to break away from what has been ingrained, even when the sweet whisper of spirit is inviting us into expansion. But if on an individual level, our religion, our God, or our spiritual practice brings us out of love and into confinement, that's not God. That's human. On a level with others and interacting with others and presencing others, does our understanding of God serve them? Does my understanding of God serve you? Does it serve you in how I share the planet with you, how I speak to you, how I show up for you, how I have space for you in my life, how I connect with you? Or does it cause you to harm, judge, hate, discriminate? One is love. One is the absence of love. Does it help us generate understanding, compassion, and acceptance? There is a passage in Susan Jeffers' book, and Embracing Uncertainty, and it references someone calling in or talking about an expert on the Bible, and the expert giving advice on kind of biblical law and how we should show up. And in an open letter, this individual responds to the directive given by this authority. Dr. Laura Schlesinger was discussing homosexuality in the Bible and using the Bible to validate and verify that homosexuality is wrong. And here is part of the response. Dear Dr. Laura, thank you for doing so much to educate people regarding God's law. I have learned a great deal from your radio show, and I try to share that knowledge with as many people as I can. When someone tries to defend the homosexual lifestyle, for example, I remind them that Leviticus 18:22 clearly states that it is an abomination. End of debate. I do need some advice from you, however, regarding some of the specific Bible laws and how to honor them. I would like to sell my daughter into slavery as sanctioned in Exodus 21:7. In this day and age, what do you think would be a fair price for her? She's 18 and starting university. Will the slave buyer continue to pay for her education by law? He goes on to say, most of my male friends get their hair trimmed, including the hair around their temples, even though this is expressly forbidden in Leviticus 19:27. How should they die? I know you have studied these things extensively, so I'm confident you can help. Thank you again for reminding us that God's word is eternal and unchanging. Funny or not funny? It can be humorous when we hear the insanity of taking someone else's word for it, word for word, without measuring against our hearts, which is what scripture tells us, which is what the master teacher demonstrated, measuring it against your heart. You know, the walk of the master teacher was one to go against the religion that he was brought up in. The religion around him was to go against the government of the time, the religion of the time, and the limitations of the people of the time. And when we get stuck and when we stay in someone else's interpretation of authority without questioning it, without measuring it up against love, without asking the question, does it serve? We can go about our lives serving something that is not God. What are you serving up? What am I serving up? What is the feast we are giving ourselves and our world? So let's talk about the collective and our spiritual practice or our religion or our God concept honoring the collective. Does our practice help us feel more connected with all of life, more connected with nature, with all of creation, or does it lead us to consumption? Does it lead us to the idea that everything around me is here for me to step on, to step up from, to utilize and consume? Or does it teach me to steward? Does it teach me to consider all of life and all of creation as sacred? Does it lead me into stewardship and sustainability or into being a glutton and greed? How does my spiritual practice interact with the collective? And if it doesn't at all inform how we eat, how we show up for the environment, how we treat and regard all of nature and all of creation, if it doesn't at all, there is a blind spot. Because see, God is present from center to circumference. So when we put an end on where God is and where God shows up in our lives, we're cutting God out. As far as the collective environment in the world, does our spiritual practice and does our God concept embrace the fullness of love and look like love everywhere? Dr. Cornel West said, never forget that justice is what love looks like in public. Never forget that justice is what love looks like in public. You know, when I was typing that in on my computer, I came back to it and I read the quote and I was like, wait, that's not right. Because what I typed in was never forget that justice is what God looks like in public. I'm so versed in unity that the word love accidentally got swapped with the word God. So think about which one fits for you. Which one brings you into higher awareness? Never forget that justice is what love, what God looks like in public. Susan Jeffers gave us this litmus test. She said, if it's not about love, it's not about God. It's that simple. If it's not about love, it's not about God. It can be about our God constructs, our religion, our ideas, but if it's not about love, it's not about God. Unity is kind of notorious for being thought of as a religion and classified as a religion and being very anti-religion. Stepping into an as religion and speaking against the limitations of religion. And we've been doing it for quite some time, encouraging people to measure everything against their hearts, to take nothing because I said it, nothing because Charles Fillmore said it, nothing because it's in the Bible, nothing because it's anywhere that anyone gave it to you, without thinking about it and measuring it against your truest understanding of love and the absolute intelligence of your heart and the expanded intelligence of your mind. So Sig Paulson, a Unity teacher many, many years ago in Your Power to Be, he starts the book like this. And I would like to read from this book for 20 minutes, but I'm going to give you the shorter version, which is long. Are you ready? Take a deep breath in. He calls this chapter The Religious Explosion. He says the human scene is rocked by explosions that mark the breaking up of an old world belief and experience. Knowledge explosions, population explosions, racial explosions are shattering the foundation of the social structure that has been building for centuries. An old world is slipping into the wastebasket of eternity, and the shape of the new world being brought forth on the stage of human experience is only dimly perceived. Everything that man has believed is being questioned in the light of scientific breakthrough. Cherished beliefs are being discarded, and venerable institutions are coming apart at the seams, while a healthy breeze of inquiry blows through them. While the occasional voices are raised in an attempt to preserve the old order, they usually speak with more volume than authority. I didn't freeze. I just like that part. They usually speak with more volume than authority. And the status quo and the status past are no longer powerful enough to stem the tide of change. Explosive changes are going off in the area of religion too. After centuries of growing affluence and waning influence, institutionalized religion is being boldly challenged, not so much by sinful men to whom it had become adjusted, but by thinking men who probe into its foundations, question its doctrines and usefulness, and even theorize that its God is dead. The comfortable pulpit is no longer so comfortable, and the upholstered pew is proving to be hard sitting for those who venture into the lofty cathedrals of modern religion in search for the bread of life. For hundreds of years, much of the professional clergy has been sitting on its collective bottom, spiritually speaking, rising to its feet once or twice a week to preach prosaic sermons and in language often incomprehensible to anyone but its own members. Are we willing to let go of the old and the limited, to let go of an inherited idea or concept of God for a wild and living experience of God consciousness. Charles Fillmore, in The Revealing Word, does attempt to define God for us. And I'll share with you some snippets of what he says. God, the infinite, eternal. God is not a person, but a principle, the underlying unchangeable truth. Principle is absolute good expressed in all creation. So God as principle is absolute good expressed in all creation. God individualizes as man in man. God is that from which all love springs. God is that from which all love springs. So we can ask ourselves, can love spring from this? God is life and love and wisdom and power and strength and substance. We do not see God with our physical eyes except manifest through works. God's attributes are brought into expression by us. God is spirit, the principle of intelligence and life, everywhere present at all times, forever as accessible as accessible as a principle of mathematics or music. God as health is absolute wholeness. God as law is principle and action. God as life is experienced beyond grasp. God is mind. God is principle. God is spirit. God is substance. God is truth. So what is our God concept? Is your God concept limited to something outside of you, or is it inside of you as well? Does it serve not just you, but does it serve others and serve the collective? Do you believe in a loving God, or do you believe that God is love? Religion and spirituality, if it's not about you, it's limited. It should be about you and your life and how you live it. It should be about your sense of self-confidence, not loyalty issues. God doesn't have self-confidence issues or keep a list of what doctrines you read and whether or not you're approved. That's not the God of love. That's the old God of manipulation and external authority. Spirituality, and the key to it, I believe, it's less about how we define God and more about how our belief in God defines who we are. It is less about how we define God and more about how our God concept defines who we are and how we show up, how we feel life, how we presence life, the resources and resilience we have to navigate life, to grow. The more you reflect God, the more you become an experience of God, the more you are a testament to God. The more people can see you and say, I don't know what I believe about God, but there's got to be something because that person's amazing. There's got to be something because that invention is ridiculous. There's got to be something because that creation or that level of ability to love, ability to forgive, ability to embody something is superhuman. That gift could only come from a super being. There's got to be something more. So the key is to bring in the light, to send the light to others, because you are the light of the world. So we focus on what feels like God. We focus on what feels like God. Susan Jeffers said, if you truly want to feel a sense of God, whether you believe in God or not, Take notice of how you feel when you act in loving ways. It's a feeling like none other, sublime. It is a feeling of connection and happiness in its purest form. Symbolically, it is truly embracing the light of a higher power and letting it flow through you to embrace others. I bring us back to Sig Paulson. In many ways, a new religion is emerging, and its high priests are the leaders and researchers of the science world, the scientific world. Open minds in both the religious and scientific fields are observing the unity of these two areas of human endeavor. And hopefully, the stage is being set for a combined effort to wipe out the ignorance that has held man in bondage. He goes on to say, if religion is to be an effective member of the team and bring forth guidelines that will help to keep humanity intact, it will have to rise above its role of institutionalized social service, building schools, churches, and hospitals, important though these are. It will have to rise above its role of frustrated bookkeeper of men's sins and morals. It will have to rise above its role of pointer to the blessings of the paradise in the great beyond. It will have to become what it is designed to be, a channel for the truth that sets men free here and now, from the bondage, the ignorance, the frustration, the bitterness, the separateness of daily living. Be the reason that someone else believes in the possibility of God. If you focus on helping someone learn who they truly are, they will inevitably know God. So be the reason that someone else believes in the possibility of God, because they've experienced it in and through and as you. Namaste.